Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Chelsea and I am so glad to see you here today. I am testing out some new microphones for today's video, so I really hope you guys like the audio. I hope it's a bit better. If it's not, please don't tell me. These mics were kind of expensive and it will hurt my feelings. Today we are going to be talking about probably one of the most unfortunate things that come along with reading as a hobby. You saw the title. Today we're going to be talking about book slumps. We're going to be talking about some recommendations of books that I have if you by chance are in a book slump and you need some fast, good books to get you out of it. We're also going to be talking about some signs that I've noticed from myself as a reader and from other people of things that could potentially put you into a book slump, things to look out for so that you can avoid a book slump, and just general tips of how to get out of a book slump. I hope you like this video. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to do that. Grab a drink, grab a snack. I have my little half drink already because I filmed like 30 minutes of this video and decided to start over. This was a brown sugar almond milk latte. Now it's probably so watered down. Guys, could I do ASMR with this? Wait, can you hear me swallow if I do this? Could you hear that? Anyways, we're gonna have a nice little chill chit chat. We're gonna talk about books and just be some book besties together. So yeah, let's get into this. First, I want to talk about a book slump, what it is, and I feel like the different types of a book slump. So the most general definition of a book slump is when just a reader or someone in general does not want to pick up books or is not enjoying the books that they are reading. I feel like book slumps can be brought on by a ton of different things, which we are going to be talking about in this video. There's a few different types of book slumps in itself. There are book slumps where you just genuinely don't find enjoyment in reading. There's book slumps where you will read, but you cannot remember anything that's happening in the pages. There are book slumps where you just genuinely have been hating every single book. It's not that you're not enjoying reading, it's that you just are really hating everything that you're reading itself. I want to talk about some of the ways that I personally have gotten into book slumps and some of the most common ways that I feel like I know people get into book slumps themselves. Starting off with the timing of reading books themselves. So I've noticed when my life is super busy and I'm just a busy gal and I do not put away specific time for me to read books, that I will get into a book slump. Reading is such a beautiful hobby and I love it so much, but for me it seems to be one of those things where if I take time off from it, I have to kind of put in the work to get back into the habit of doing it. I don't know if anyone else kind of agrees with that. I feel like I don't really hear a lot of people talk about it in that way. When I'm super busy and it takes me really long to finish a book, it is really hard for me and it's really hard on my ratings of books and everything like that. Within that same idea, but on the opposite spectrum, also, if I am reading 5 books in 1 week, I will slump myself out. I have to give myself a break in between the books that I read. I feel like this isn't very common. I don't know if it is the book talkification of reading as a hobby, if it's social media, whatever it is. It kind of feels like reading sometimes is more of a race between people to say that they've read the most amount of books, that they've read the best books, that they were the first to find the newest 5-star read. And sometimes it just feels like a competition than an enjoyment. This is your reminder that at the end of the day, reading is a hobby. The amount of books that you read in a year, in a month, does not matter. What matters is that you are taking care of yourself, and if you enjoy reading, that you're doing something that you enjoy. I've just noticed that when I try to push myself to read a certain number of books in a month, if it's more than like 2 books a week, 3 books a week is kind of pushing it, I will slump myself out. I need to give myself some time and a break in between my reading to, I don't know, just digest the stories, to do other hobbies that I have. Those are kind of 2 things that are very easy ways to slump myself out with reading, and kind of things to be looking out for when you are reading to make sure that you don't possibly put yourself in a book slump. Another thing to kind of look out for is reading the same type of stories over and over again. I am really bad with this, especially as of late. I've been reading so many little like kitschy, like fun holiday summer romances, and I'm having the time of my life with them. But to make sure that I'm not in a book slump, I've been splitting them up with pretty much books on the opposite spectrum of those little cute holiday romance. They're not holidays. Summer, am I British? I've been reading thrillers, I've been reading fantasies, so I'll read a romance, a thriller, a romance, a fantasy. That way when I'm doing it, I'm kind of getting a break from each type of story, and then by the time I finish the one book, I can just go back into the other type of story. For some reason, it's really just romance and thrillers for me right now. I'm like in a thriller kick, but I cannot read the same genre back to back, especially if the stories are like carbon copies of each other. I will go insane. And then another thing, which I feel like this is probably the most common sense way to get into a book slump, but not allowing yourself to DNF books. I am still pretty bad at this. I hate DNFing books because I feel like I've wasted the time in the book, but it's also really stupid because I'm just gonna waste more time finishing the book and then I'm never gonna talk about the book. I still do this, but I am working on it. I am a lot better than I was in previous years with this. It's just, in my opinion, like, I'm sure most of us watching this video, I work a full-time job. I'm sure you do too. Maybe you're even a student. We all have a very limited time to read. And so why are we wasting that time reading a book that we don't want to? I don't care if it's a very popular book talk book. Put it away. You can hard DNF a book or you can soft DNF a book. Just go to a book that you're going to enjoy, a book that's not going to put you in a book slump, and you can always go back to the book another day. That is the beauty of a soft DNF. I soft DNF'd Crescent City too for like, I think 2 years, and I finally finished it. Did I read the physical book that I owned? No, I rented it from the library because that book is big as f. Soft DNFs are so beautiful. There is nothing worse than pushing yourself to finish a book just to say that you finished it, finishing it, and then being in a book slump. There is nothing worse, truly. So now that I've talked about the ways and things that I've noticed make me get into a book slump, I want to talk about just general things that you can do to keep yourself out of a book slump or to help you get out of a book slump. I've noticed this with my attention span due to the damn clock app. Put away your phone, get off your phone, get off of social media, and allocate 30 minutes of your day to reading. This is like genuinely detrimental, especially when you're starting a book. I've noticed this the most. I start a book and I only casually read it for like 5 minutes or so. If I do not force myself to finish like the first 2 chapters or 20 minutes of reading, I probably won't like the book because I read it for a little bit, the characters and the story are not stuck in my brain, and then I'll go back to it. I'm continuing on with the story, but I don't care because I don't remember the characters or anything like that. So what I've pushed myself to do as of recently is I don't let myself stop reading a book until I can kind of remember some of the characters. I can remember a little bit of the plot within that first chunk of me starting a book. This has helped me so much so that I don't slump out when starting new books, especially if you're starting a genre that you're not too sure about. This tip has helped me so much recently. As much as reading is a hobby and it feels like a second nature to just, you know, sit on the couch when you get home from work and grab your Kindle or grab a paperback, it is sometimes at the end of the day a habit that you need to make, and especially if you're out of routine of it, you gotta build that habit. Allocate some time into your day to just focus on reading, and within a couple of days you're gonna be wanting to pick up books. That is probably honestly one of my biggest tips for book slumps. There is the obvious book slump tip of pick out smaller books. So like a novella would be a great book to read. Pick out YA books, books that are a lot quicker to read, or books that will keep you on the edge of your feet. Those will go by faster, they're gonna hook you, they're gonna keep you wanting to read. Otherwise too, if you're in a book slump, honestly, if you have a Kindle, or even if you don't have a Kindle, if you have a smartphone, you have Kindle Unlimited, or even if you don't have Kindle Unlimited, if you have Libby, you can read on your smartphone on the Libby app, which is what you can use if you have a library card to download free ebooks, and just read on your phone. I read so many more books on my, I was about to say my Nook. I haven't used a Nook since I was like in middle school. I read so many more books when I'm able to just lay down and have my Kindle in my hand. I don't read much on my phone just because I honestly, if I could have like a BlackBerry or a flip phone in this day and age, I would. Genuinely, I hate my phone. Sometimes the feeling of holding a book is just so much, and I'm lazy as most of the time. So having some sort of like e-reader really helps when I'm in a book slump and I just don't want to hold something. If you want to be beyond lazy, get one of those like clickers for your Kindle. That way you could literally just be posted up laying in bed, arms under the cover, hitting a button and it's turning the pages of your Kindle. Like, that is peak innovation. Whoever made that, smart as This tip for getting out of a book slump is also one that I feel like is very common, going along with putting you in a book slump if you're reading the same genre back to back. Read a genre that you don't normally read. If you are an avid romance reader, test out thriller or even test out horror books. If you are someone who reads a lot of literary fiction, maybe test out a fast fantasy book. I think switching up genres is so important because yes, there are thousands and thousands of books out there and we are never going to be able to read enough and get enough stories in our heads, but it is so important to also give yourself a break from your favorite genre and maybe discover books that you wouldn't normally pick up. I've been in and out of a fantasy slump for like the past year and a half. I think I've read a few fantasy books that I've really liked, but fantasy was my main genre pretty much from when I was in middle school till like this past year. I feel like now I've hit more of a romance, thriller, literary fiction era, and especially literary fiction is something that I felt was very out of my comfort zone, and as of late it has been my comfort zone. I've loved those books. Maybe it's just getting older that I enjoy those stories, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't force myself to read out of my genre. So I can't recommend that enough. Do it. It helps so much. And sometimes maybe you're not in a book slump, maybe you're just in a genre slump. Test that out. Maybe it will help. Also, if you are not wanting to read physically, just listen to an audiobook. If you're doing your grocery shopping, if you're going on your hot girl walk, if you are driving to work, driving to the mall, listen to an audiobook. It still gives you that same feeling that you get when you read. You're still absorbing the story, but you're not having to go through the motions of analyzing the words on a page and figuring it out and all of that. You're just listening to a story. I love doing this with like thrillers. I also like recently have started listening to fantasy books on audiobook, and I really like them. So listen to audiobooks and maybe chop up the way that you're getting stories, and it might help. Now that I have just literally yapped your ear off, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be talking about the different book recommendations that I have for book slumps. Now, most of these are either going to be just super fast-paced books, or they are going to be my 5 or 6-star reads. I do have different genres, so I will have them all on the screen so you can just skip to whichever one that you would like the recommendations for. I'm going to talk about thriller, romance, fiction, and then YA. So let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about thrillers because I feel like thrillers and YA are the two best genres to read if you are in a book slump. So these are just some of my favorite thrillers. The first one is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Survive the Night is about a college-aged girl as our main character, and she does a drive share to get from her college campus back home because on her college campus there was a murder that took place. The police are trying to find who the killer is, and she just does not feel safe. She wants to be home with her family, but she doesn't have a car and she lives super far away from campus, so she decides to do this drive share. The book takes place within, I think it's 24 hours, so pretty much every chapter is a different hour. It is super fast paced. I loved this book. There is a reason Riley Sager is probably one of the most popular thriller authors within the booktube community. I would really recommend checking out his books as well as that book if you are interested. The next thriller recommendation that I have is probably, I think, my worst nightmare. I had Catherine Senner like one of my Goodreads reviews. Granted, I gave it a 6-star, so she liked a good review, but the fact that authors can perceive me, the fact that people can perceive me is my biggest nightmare, but the fact that authors could freaks me out. This book is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I'm sure you've all heard about it. This is about a girl who leaves a 1-star review on a book that just was genuinely like giving her worms in her brains. Like, it was so bad. And the author of the book decides to literally hunt her down and kill her. That book was crazy. I did listen to that one on audiobook and I really liked the audiobook, so I would recommend that if you're interested. And then my last thriller recommendation is by Frida McFadden themselves, and it is Never Lie. This one was a 5-star for me. I haven't read a lot of Frida McFadden books, but this book is top notch. So our main characters of this book are 2 newlyweds that are looking at a house to buy, but they get trapped in the house because of a snowstorm, and they find out that in this house there was was this crazy murder that took place, I believe, of this therapist, psychologist, I forget what they are exactly. And there are just some crazy twists that happen in this book. It was so unbelievably good. I've heard a lot of things about some of Freida McFadden's books, that some of them aren't great, but I loved this one, and I don't like a lot of book talk books, so this one has a stamp of approval from me. And then we are going to talk next about YA, because that is probably the next genre that I think is one of the best to read if you're in a slump, just because YA, there's nothing in there that's not fast-paced. YA is going to be straight to the point, and that's why I love it. I only have 2 recommendations for this one, and they're both pretty basic books, but I haven't been reading a lot of YA lately, so I need to dabble into some more YA, some newer YA. I might have to make a stop at a Barnes sometime soon, or even a Half Price Books. I've been really wanting to check out one of those stores. I've never been to one, and they like really excite me. My 2 recommendations, the first one is the Naturals series. I know everyone's probably already read this, but if you have not, the Naturals is basically imagine Criminal Minds, but it's teenagers. It's this group of teenagers that went through super traumatic life experiences, and the FBI decides to take them and to put them into this program to develop their talents instead of put them through school and lose them as possible recruits for the FBI in the future. They're supposed to be only working on cold cases, but it's a book, so you can imagine how it goes. And it is just so interesting. It's a 4-book series. They go by super fast. The cases are so interesting, and there's a little bit of a romance, but it's found family. It's just so good, so fast-paced. And the entire time I was just thinking of Spencer Reid while I was reading the books, so I really loved it personally. And then the next YA book is another series, and it is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I don't know why, but I feel like this would be great if you're in a book slump and you just really need to try and dive into an atmospheric book. I think Stephanie Garber is one of the best YA fantasy authors. Her books are so descriptive, and you just genuinely feel like you've looked into a wishing well and dived into the story and you're in the world. They're so good. I know a lot of people prefer the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. The way that the Once Upon a Broken Heart series ended, I think Caraval as a trilogy in general it just is, I think, a little bit more well-rounded. Caraval is about this circus that only comes to town, I think it's once a year or just every so often, and Scarlett and Donatella get invited to go to the game. It is very hard to get an invitation to the game, and they decide to go, but one of our main characters ends up realizing their sister is the game. It's just so good, so magical. I read them so fast and I loved them. We're going to talk about some romance books. Most of these are just going to be 5 or 6 star reads. Some of them are just going to be very fast reads. I feel like these are pretty common books because I don't read a lot of romance, so I don't get to dive into stories that not a lot of people have read. So first off, an author that is from Minnesota, and I have to represent my hometown state, Abby Jimenez, Just for the Summer. This book takes place in Minnesota, which is so fun. They go to Culver's, which if you do not live in the Midwest and you've never gotten to experience a butter burger and a lemon ice strawberry mango refresher, I feel sorry for you. I would never leave the Midwest because I never want to leave Culver's behind. It is that serious. Just for the Summer is about our 2 main characters. One is a travel nurse and one is a guy. I don't remember what he does. They meet because they both have this curse where every person that they date, they'll break up with them and then they meet the love of their lives after them. So in order to cancel the curse, they decide to date each other and try and break the curse. But it's a romance book. Imagine how that goes. I loved it so much. I think a part of it, of why I loved it, is because it does take place in Minnesota. And so as I'm reading these places that they're going and all of these things, I'm picturing the actual places because I've been there. But also, I think Abby Jimenez is just a great author. The characters felt real. It was so good. I would really recommend that book, especially because it's summer right now. I think it would be a great time to read that. I put this in romance because I'm pretty sure this is technically dark romance. The Mindfuck series. I've not talked a lot about the Mindfuck series on my channel. I actually believe they just took like published version that you can't buy it anymore, but I think you can still read it on Kindle Unlimited. That's how I read it. It is 5 books. They're all 100 pages each. They're so fast to read. It is about this serial killer who is falling in love and dating an FBI agent. okay, Spencer Reed fanfic. I loved it. Is it one of those books that's like kind of bad? Yeah, it's not a literary masterpiece. It is a good time though. That is sometimes all you need in a book. My next book recommendation is a book that probably everyone's already read, but it is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I've not talked a whole lot about Beach Read. I actually think I did a vlog reading Beach Read, and that was like my first video when I started posting on YouTube again, which is kind of cool. But it is about these two rivals. Our main character, I forget what her name is, but she has to go back to her dad's lake house because her dad dies, I think it is. I haven't read the book in so long. She has to go back to the lake house to get ready to sell it, and she's been very uninspired for the genre that she writes, and this guy that lives like across the street from her writes in a different genre, so they decide that they're going to switch genres and see who can write a better book. It's kind of rivals dislike to lovers. I'm sure everyone's already read it, but if you've not, it's a very good book. And if you have been kind of on the fence of those more popular book talk books that you're unsure if they're actually good because everyone recommends them, and sometimes it feels like people are just jumping on a bandwagon instead of forming their own opinions, let me tell you, I actually really enjoyed that book, and I am someone who I will be the first to admit when I do not like a book. Two more recommendations for romance books, and these are both, I think, pretty new books. The first one, The Bodyguard by Catherine Senner. This is the book that Catherine Senner liked my Goodreads review. I was so confused, but it was such a good book. I have not fallen in love with a book boyfriend in so long. I love this man. Our main character is a woman bodyguard for like CEOs, oil execs, the president, literally anyone. She is a secret bodyguard, and our male main character is this famous actor. He left the limelight over a situation that happened in the past, and he has to come back into the public eye because his mom is going through some health issues, so he wants to take her to appointments and just be there for his family, so he can't really not be in the public eye. And so he hires a bodyguard, which is this girl, but he doesn't want his family to know that he has a bodyguard, so they fake date. And there's a forced proximity trope in this, and it's so good. Oh my god. I haven't been able to talk about this book in a video yet. I will have a reading wrap up pretty soon with me ranting about how good this book was, but so good. Please read that book. It is amazing. And then my last romance recommendation is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I almost just said Carly Rae Jepsen. Anyways, This Summer Will Be Different is one that I feel like has been kind of hit or miss, but I absolutely loved this book. It is best friend's brother, our main character. She goes to Prince Edward Island, I believe it's called, and she has a one-night stand with a guy. She finds out later on that that guy is actually her best friend's younger brother, and it's the one guy in the world that is literally beyond off limits for her. They never tell the sister is past and present timeline, and it goes for years and years, and there's just, it's such a great book, and it's so much more than the romance. It's a lot about friendships and relationships, and it's so great. I read it so quickly. It's such a fast read, and it's one of those books that doesn't take a lot of brain power, and if you're in a book slump and you just need a good book to get you through, a book like that is great. My last recommendation is a fiction recommendation, and it is a shorter book. So this is a book that I've only talked about a few times, and it is A Psalm for the Wild West Built. This book is literally only 160 pages. I listened to it as an audiobook, and it was 5 hours. It literally, I did a deep clean of my entire apartment, listened to it on 2x speed, and I was done with the book within one night. It is such a cute little heartwarming story. In this world, humans basically used and abused robots to the point where they are no longer in direct contact. The robots went away to the woods. They've lived in solitude, and one day a human comes in contact with this robot, and the robot asks the question, what do humans need? And it is such a beautiful story. I read this during a time where I was just feeling very down about life and about the purpose of life and everything like that. And it was such a great book to kind of put my head back on straight. And I don't know, it's such a cute story. I love Mosscap. He's absolutely adorable. And the second book is just as good, and it's just as short. So those two fiction books are great if you need just a short book to kind of get you through your little book slump you're going through. So yeah, that is today's video. video. I hope you got some good advice on how to hopefully get out of a book slump. I am so sorry if you are in one. I know they are absolutely the worst. I'm kind of going through a mini one right now, but also if you're subscribed to my channel, I think I've said I'm going through a book slump for like the past 6 months, so it's fine. But yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new and not subscribed, make sure to do that. I will see you in my next video, and until then,